We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
Boom! Headshot!
Hey, it's Clay. How you guys doing? I got another Battlefield 3 video for you today, and this time I wanted to do a little bit more of an introspection. I want to talk about why Battlefield 3 is a good game. I want to talk about why I play Battlefield 3. What draws me to Battlefield 3? Why have I been playing it for the past year and a half? You know, and this really could apply to a lot of other games too, but for me, I'm just thinking specifically about Battlefield 3 in this moment. But there are, certain principles about kind of this discussion that you could take and apply to other games too. And I think it's a really helpful thing to kind of sit back and think about why something works or doesn't work for you. And so, to kind of like preface my discussion, in order to think about why I enjoy it, it's important to think about kind of that concept in general. Like, what do video games in general do? Why am I drawn to first-person shooters specifically in general? And then narrow it down even more specifically to Battlefield 3. And video games are a really, really powerful tool and medium to provide a certain experience. I mean, basically, regardless of what video game you're playing, it's providing you with a certain experience. And that experience can be very different, and that experience can intentionally try to scratch a different itch, if you will. It can try to, appeal to a different desire that each people has in their video games. And, to think critically for a moment, there are some certain basic, I guess, reasons that people play games. You can kind of lump them together into categories. This is kind of how genres come to be. You've got, certain games like Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto where you have the ability to do something in the video game that you could never do in real life. In Battlefield 3, I'm shooting an AN-94. There's no way that I could ever shoot this rifle with the accuracy or potency there's just no way that I will ever get to the point where I have this skill to do this. I mean, it's just impossible. There's literally no way that I could ever do this in reality. It's just not going to happen for me. And video games are a really, really powerful and interesting way to do that. You can experience things that are totally outside of your realm of possibilities, but yet they feel real and they feel very engaging. They allow you to, enter this fantasy, if you will, or this imagination, where you can kind of become somebody different than who you really are. It's maybe not necessarily an escape, but just it allows you to experience something new and different. And there are other reasons. Competition. Thinking specifically about games like StarCraft or League of Legends or COD 4 Pro Mod on PC. All these games are very much intentionally designed from a competitive perspective. They're intentionally designed to be well suited for competitive play, and that's a really interesting place to be. That's a really interesting. It's kind of aiming at this primal desire to compete, and there are social games. Games where that makes it really easy to play with your friends, or really, really easy to, think about League of Legends and how it's intentionally centered around 5v5. So it's supposed to be something that you play with other people. Or something like Borderlands 2, that was the cooperative experience was better than the single play experience because the game intentionally tries to bring people together. I could go on and on. There's lots of different categories and reasons for playing games. It's stories, narrative, lots of different reasons. But for me, for Battlefield 3, thinking about it, a lot of it I think does come down to that first reason that I talked about, the ability to experience something new and different. It allows me to be this hero, if that makes sense. It allows me to achieve some sort of mastery, and that's possibly a different reason, but somewhat related. Is this idea of gaining skill or mastery or domination over my opponents? I really enjoy that. I really enjoy gaining advantages over my opponents. I really enjoy, whether it's by gaining an understanding of how the guns work, or an understanding of how the game mechanics work, or just sheer practice and mastering things like aim or movement or positioning. You know, I find it just really, really fun to learn game mechanics to get to a point where I can just dominate the field. I think that's really a fun reason for why I play Battlefield. And you know, I think Battlefield does a really good job of having a mixture of these things. I think that, you know, the way that it mixes tactics and strategy, you know, it's not just that you're running around and shooting, but that it's a strategic game. There's intentional elements of teamwork built in, where you have to work together to achieve a common objective. You know, that in itself is really cool and really interesting. So it scratches that itch for, you know, higher cognitive thought, for high-level teamwork. You know, those types of things. It does a really, really good job of that. And then also, you know, I also think that you know, overall, Battlefield 3 does a really good job of immersion, of, you know, putting you in this setting where things are very, very immersive. I don't want to say real, because, you know, realism I don't think is necessarily I may have talked about this before, and I may talk about it again in the future, but realism in first-person shooters I don't think is a good thing. But it's immersive. The way that the guns bounce when you shoot them, the suppression mechanic is a really, really interesting way to increase immersion. You know, you know, all these different things have this ability to make you feel like you're really there, like you're really this soldier, and you're really trying to defend this MCOM from being destroyed. You know, Battlefield 3 does a great job with that. I think that's one of its greatest strengths. And overall, I think that the way that it mixes these things together, these core elements, it mixes them very, very well, very successfully, and it makes for a really interesting experience, you know. I enjoy that it definitely, you know, it has taken strides to kind of, you know, tweak its role. You know, Battlefield 3 compared to Battlefield 2 is a very different experience. You know, Battlefield 3, I think, has moved in the direction of being more infantry-focused, less vehicle-focused. All that is very, you know, tactical decisions made by the developer. And I think in part that's because, you know, if you think about first-person shooters, the genre has exploded, and, you know, one-on-one infantry combat has become really huge, and so they're drawing on that common experience and knowledge that a lot of gamers have, whereas vehicle warfare has definitely not been of such a high. You just don't see it quite as often or quite as frequently as you do infantry combat. So making the game more infantry focused, I think, will appeal to a wider audience. But overall, you know, I've kind of talked about a lot of different things, but I think for me it really comes down to the mixture of tactics and the competitive, you know, the domination element, where I want to, you know, you have this ability where you can master the recoil, master the guns, master the strategy, and you can get to the point where you're really good, and you are able to really tangibly, you know, have this sense of victory in that you have a high skill. You know, all that mixture, I think, is really fascinating. And really, when it comes down to it, I think that's why I play Battlefield 3, because number one, I enjoy the tactics and strategy. Number two, I enjoy the skill that the game offers. I enjoy playing the game at a high level. And I think that it's a really interesting thing to think about, you know, when you start talking about a game like Battlefield 3, and we talk about all these other things like balance or game mechanics or Battlefield 4, what they should have in Battlefield 4. I think that it's important to keep in mind these core design elements, these core reasons for why we play the game, and how can we improve them? How can we have the gameplay, you know, synergize or mesh or speak the same language as you know, these, so that you want the mechanics of the game to support the reason you play the game. You want those things to be in unison. You know, and so little things like having a game that, you know, scratches that competitive itch yet is very noob friendly. Those things are contradictory. Whereas on the other hand, if you want a game that is more of a, you know, I know a lot of people play video games just to kind of zone out or to de-stress. That's a very legitimate reason to play a video game. So in that instance, you want things that are noob friendly. You want things that are, you know, catered to newer players who don't really want to be as hardcore. I'm not saying that either approach is better or worse, but but I'm just saying it's important to take these design elements into the discussion, to understand the ways in which these design elements interact with the core message and theme and the reasoning behind why you play the game. Those are important things to work together. But overall, I'm gonna cut it off here. I've been rambling on, and I could probably talk about this for a long time because I think it's a really, really fascinating topic. You know, and it starts to bring together all these elements of video games, about game design and games as art, games as experiences, you know, why people play video games. All these things kind of come together in this conversation. And so, you know, as we move forward, as we start talking about Battlefield 3, as we start moving, or Battlefield 4, as we start moving away from Battlefield 3, anytime you're talking about improving a game or making a game better, keep that in mind, that what is the game about? What is the specific, you know, what are the specific reasons why you play a certain game over another game? What are the core elements that game appeals to you in you? And you know, how can the game mechanics, you know, complement that design element? So go, if I could ask you guys, please leave a comment down below and just tell me, why do you play Battlefield 3, or if you want to talk about another game, why does a certain game appeal to you? What are the specific reasons about why you think a game is fun? So I look forward to reading your comments down below, and I will see you soon.